Okay, welcome everyone to the Elokus podcast. Um, this is going to be class number 10 in the discourse Vaidabe Moshe Roshei Hamatos, which is the 10th discourse in the great book B'Shosh Egdimu 5672. So it's class 10 in discourse 10, so that's 10-10, just like Asara B'Tevis this week, which is the 10th day of the 10th month. This is also going to be the first class and chapter 39 in the overall discourse. We concluded chapter 38 in the last class. We're just going to didn't do the kitzer. We didn't do the summary at the end of the class. So let's do at the end of the chapter, let's do the summary of chapter 38, and now we go on to 39. Kitzer. What he innovated in the main chiddush of chapter 38 was where he began to explore that the differences that there is between every level of world or sphere and so on and so forth is not only a difference of more light and less light, filtering in from the kav, from the beam of light, although that is, of course, a very great factor. But really, there's a more essential difference between the spherot and the worlds, which already position them within a framework of higher and lower. And it's because of that essential difference between the higher spheres and the lower spheres, or the higher worlds and the lower worlds, that also then manifest as allowing more light to come into a higher world, and a higher sphere is more of a vessel or more ready for higher light, for more light, and a lesser sphere and a lesser world, a more inferior sphere and an inferior world, is going to have less light, and for that reason is going to be positioned further downstream. As the stream of light passes through the entire system, it will go to the back of the line as opposed to line up and more in the front of the line. And meaning to say, the position of where you're standing on the line is not deciding if you have more light or less light, but rather who you are and what you are is deciding where you're going to stand on line and therefore get more light or less light. So it is true that further down the line of the kav, the light narrows and gets dimmer. That is true. It's also true that the spheros that are in the back of the line are receiving, or the worlds that are at the end of the kav are receiving less light. But that's not the reason why but that itself needs an explanation. Why are they positioned in the back of the line that they should receive from the dimmed out light? Why shouldn't they be up in front? The answer is that's not just because, fortune and luck lucked out. The opposite. It was not. They weren't lucky. They ended up in the back of the line. They were placed in the back, but rather because of the essential quality of who they are, that they are of inferior quality, and that's why they get to the back of the line. That's kind of what we were learning in chapter 38. He explained that how that is in the worlds, and he began to say that it's also in the spheros, in Chachma and in Bina. But the explanation on Chachma and Bina we didn't really learn, and that's what we're going to learn in chapter 39, where he's going to explain the fundamental difference between Chachma and Bina, wisdom and understanding, that it's not only a difference of a higher sphere with more light, but that there is a fundamental characteristic in Chachma that is lacking in Bina. Let's see. Kitzer, but let's first do the summary of last chapter. However, in Yeribuya or the much light, or miyata or the lessening of light, is only for the sake of allowing. This is before he comes with his new idea. So in the beginning, he's saying no. The more light and less light is because since the spherot needs to evolve one from the other, each one needs to be a source for the next one. So within each sphere itself, and since the next sphere is going to contain less light, so therefore within the sphere itself there is a lessening. Remember, we learned that in Chachma itself contains all 10 spheres. There is more light in the earliest spherot in Chachma than in the less, meaning the dimming doesn't only go from sphere to sphere, but within each attribute itself, there is already a dimming happening from the higher levels of that sphere to the lower levels of the sphere. Is only for the sake of the evolution of spheres one from the other. Because of this, there needs to be hamiyut. the diminishment, gam b'seif madrega alyoina, also in the end of the higher level, so that the lower sphera can then emerge. If the light would be totally, powerfully as bright, carrying through the entire range of Chachma, from the head of Chachma to the feet of Chachma, would have the same brightness, then Bina would never be able to emerge from Chachma. There needs to be a diminishment in the spheres of Chachma itself. The Kenu b'Chachma Bina, so it is in Chachma Bina that Chachma diminishes itself to the lower levels of Chachma, to the feet of Chachma, so that Bina can emerge. And the same is also when Bina passes the energy on, Bina, which is the understanding, second faculty of the mind, passes on that energy to the emotions. Over here as well, there is a dimming in the Bina itself. The light is brighter in the higher attributes of Bina than it is in the lower attributes of Bina. Bina Vizah and Bina and Ze'er Anpin, and also Vizah Malchus, and the same is also the Ze'er Anpin and Malchus. The light that is shining in Chesed or in Gevura or in Teferes is far more powerful than the light that shines in Netzach Hod Yesod, which have already dimmed the light so that they can pass on the energy to Malchus, to kingship. These are the way it works. However, here is where he begins to, again, now it is only a summary, but here is where he introduces that it's not just a matter of dimming light because Hashem wants it to be less light in the lower spheres, but because the spheres essentially are of lower quality. The essential idea of a higher and lower is that they are divided in their essential quality of their level. And that's the cause of why there is more light or less light. It's because of who they are and what they are. And just like Adam Kadmon, Humayla, for example, Adam Kadmon, we say, it's interesting how in the summary he reverses the order than in the actual discourse. In the actual discourse, when he began to explain the examples of a diminished light, how there is an essential qualitative difference between a higher world and a lower world, he began first by comparing the worlds above Atzilus compared to Atzilus, showing that the worlds above Atzilus, remember, I'm just going to remind you what he said, that in the worlds above Atzilus, there is the revelation of the Kav itself, of the Mohus of the Kav, the substance of the Kav, of the beam. And in Atzilus, it's only a ray of the Kav. It's no more the Kav itself. That's what he explained. And then he went on to explain that even in the world above Atzilus itself, even in the worlds above Atzilus, over there's also gradations. And over there as well, we can make a fundamental differentiation, qualitative difference between Adam Kadmon and whatever is above Atzilus, but yet below Adam Kadmon. And he explained that in Adam Kadmon also is where the essence of the light is shining, versus anything that's receiving below Adam Kadmon is already considered only a hevel, only an external type of a light. So that's what we learned it in the discourse. Over here, he reverses the order. He begins first explaining the superiority of Adam Kadmon to the spheros below it, and then he goes on in the summary to summarize the difference between the general spheros above the general worlds above Atzilus versus Atzilus. So it needs some thought why in the summary he reverses the order. The Adam Kadmon, just like primordial man, Humayla is of a higher quality, because it has the essence of the light. But from there and onward, v'hakol, everything moving forward after Adam Kadmon, hu b'chinas havalim to Adam Kadmon. It's only the hevel. Remember, we learned eye, ear, and nose of what is projected from Adam Kadmon. It's only external type of hevel. And then, so that was the difference between Adam Kadmon and what is below Adam Kadmon. And then the same is also regarding, in general, all the worlds above Atzilus versus Atzilus. And above the world of emanation, below the world of Atzilus, Atzmos HaKav is the essence of the Kav, of the beam. Uba-Atzilus, but in Atzilus, Ha'aras HaKav, which is only a ray of the Kav. Shazarak Metzius, which is considered not Mahus, but only the existence of the Kav. It doesn't appreciate the substance of what the Orein Sov is, of the Kav, which is a Kav of the Orein Sov, but rather only the information about the Orein Sov, not the substance of it. And then he begins to explore in the end of last chapter. But remember, this is what he's primarily going to deal with in the next discourse and a half, the next probably 5-6 chapters are all going to be talking about the difference between Chachma and Bina. Phenomenal discussion about it. But here is where he starts. The same as also in wisdom and in Bina, which is within Atzilus itself. Chachma is in essence above grasping. Even though it belongs to be part of the mental faculties. So you can't say it's not at all an element of knowledge. It does have some element of knowledge to Chachma. And he puts in parentheses, not like Keser, the levels of crown, which is utterly above knowledge. Like we discussed earlier, that will, desire, is one of the features, one of the aspects of Keser, or pleasure, or Emunah, plain simple faith. These are all faces and of the various different. I don't know if you call it even different over here, but experiences that we associate with Keser, which is all these experiences are utterly beyond any kind of knowledge and understanding. Like we discussed about pure willpower. When one person wants something, it's a crazy will. It's a crazy desire. That's what the real meaning of desire is. It's not limited by any types of limitations of knowledge, of understanding. Same as also faith. It's pure. So these are all transcendental experiences of Keser. But Chachma is part of the mental faculties. Yet we are saying that it's still above Hasaga, it's still above grasping completely, because we have to differentiate within intelligence itself between a graspable intelligence and an intelligence that's above being grasped, which is what Chachma is, as we're going to learn in the next few classes. So as he says, even though it's still an element of knowledge, Meirba, it shines in it, Ha'orein Sof. The Orein Sof is comfortable revealing itself in Chachma, because Chachma is not stubbornly trying to grasp it. Chachma is not uptight. Chachma is not rigid. Chachma is light and loose and allows the Orein Sof full jurisdiction and full power to express itself as it is, without Chachma needing to define it. Bina needs to define something. So Bina kind of Bina is uptight, and it won't allow an energy to really reveal itself in it, because Bina is demanding that the energy adjust itself to the Bina. So it's like I'm forcing you to present to me as I want you to present, as opposed to Chachma, which just is silent and allowing the revealer to reveal itself as it is. And that's the reason why Chachma is because Chachma is above grasping completely. And that's what he says over here. Meir by Orein Sof. The Orein Sof can shine in Chachma, in the relaxed atmosphere of Chachma, which is in Bina, you're not getting any more the direct luminance of Orein Sof. You're getting a very narrow interpretation of Orein Sof, that which Bina can agree with, which means that which the Bina can understand. So, but Chachma is still as it is above understanding, grasping. To understand all of this, let's begin the exploration of chapter 39. Here we go. The Inyan who, and the idea is the Ine. So 39 is the third chapter in the 10th discourse. And it's the last chapter of the 10th discourse. No, it's not. 39 and 40. Okay, here we go. The Inyan who, the idea is as follows. The primary difference between wisdom and understanding, who the Chachma Toifes be'etzem hadavar. Chachma grasps the essence of the matter. But Bina Toifes is only grasping rak b'metzias hadavar. Bina is only taking hold and getting, reaching for and taking in only the allowing the essence. Just give me a minute because the phone is ringing and it's driving me crazy. I have to. Okay, I'm sorry for that. Okay, so again, so what's the difference between Chachma and Bina? When Chachma, see, the mind in general is where the mind is, when you say an open mind. Open-minded. Open-minded means, in essence, you're not rigid to see things the way you want to see it. You allow yourself to receive new input, new information. You get to know new things. All right, but within that itself, the way Chachma perceives something is the perception of Chachma is that it gets to perceive the essence of the idea of whatever it is that Chachma is reaching for. Whatever is engaging your Chachma, the Chachma sees its essence. The Bina, however, he says, does not receive and does not process the essence of it. The Bina only gets the existence of it, which means the description of it. It's like you can watch a film, or you can read the description of it. Bina reads the description of it. Bina reads the Wikipedia file of every movie and can tell you who, what, where, who are the directors, who are the players, who was the thing, when the movie was launched, what is it about, what is the storyline, it can tell you I'm just taking a movie, but it can be anything. The Bina gives you the reads and wants to know all the information about it, but it doesn't know it. The Chachma is watching the movie itself, allowing yourself to see it. The Bina, as he says over here, therefore he says Bina is only tofes, it only grasps the metzius hadavar, the existence of it, which means its properties, but not it. The Bina, and that is because, so we usually think like this: Chachma is the initial point, the flash of something, of the creative mind, like it's a flash. And the Bina is just the dissecting of it, taking that and seeing the details. But now he's telling us that no, it's not just that Chachma perceives the entire concept as a point, and the Bina, breaks it open to all of its details. But actually, when you're experiencing the Bina of something, you're going away from it, and you're just losing yourself in the descriptions of it. Which really means that the Bina is only exploring the externals of something, not the real soul of something. The soul of whatever it is not inside its description. The soul of whatever it is can never be described. A description is only the external features of something, the properties of something. But there is the essence of the thing that's above its properties. And Bina has no way how to touch the essence. So Bina hovers and explores the outside of whatever it is. It's curious and it's trying to figure it out, and it's kind of making calculations in its head and trying to define it by its external properties. As he says, the Bina b'chinas hasaga, because Bina means grasping, v'chol hasaga, and every type of grasping, hu b'tziur hadavar, is in the image of the matter, loiba etzem, but not the essence. V'hainu rak b'mitzius, which means only the existence of the phenomenon, but not the substance. Hadavar levad. Echomau, how and what is it So I'm trying to define it by its descriptions. V'zeu and v'zeu sha'asaga. This is gonna make more and more sense as we're going to be reading. V'zeu sha'asaga, and this is the reason why hasaga, every grasping of an idea, Toifes says, grasp avav ktsaves shaladavar hamusik. When the mind grasps something, the mind is picking up the 6 corners or the 6 sides, the 6 ends of the concept, of the idea. What do we mean by that? Let's use, when the mind grasps something, we use the word grasping. Grasping means you're taking hold of something. So just like physically, when you want to pick up an item, if you have a box and you want to pick up the box, the only way you can pick up the box is to extend your hands to the outside of the box, which means where the box ends, to the borders of the box. And by extending your hands to the border of the box, you can pick up a large book, a large Gemara, a large tractate of Talmud. So if you're going to try to pick up the book in the middle of it, your hands have nothing to grasp on. So you have to look and see how many, this book is 1.5 feet long. So you have to stretch your hands out to get one end of it and the other end of it and pick it up by its borders. That's how we pick something up, only by its borders. And therefore, something that doesn't have any borders, we can't really pick it up because we need to pick it up by its ends. So just like physically we pick something up by its ends, the same is also the way the mind grasps something, is it needs to define what are the borders of it. And that's what Bina is doing. It's looking into the description of something to describe what it is and what it's not. And by delineating and kind of having a sense and a understanding of the definitions that define this particular entity, that's how the mind says, I grasped it. The more information I can get about it, about, time and space. See, the moment I know in which time it was, in which era it was, and I differentiate it from every other era, and I know in which space it happened, where it was, when it was, the address, the location, the space, the features, right? And what, where, and when. And the more I can see and separate it from other similar entities that people, ideas that were existing at the same time, but how this one is different, and how with all these definitions, I get a clear understanding of what it is. That is the Bina. And therefore, Bina cannot relate to something that it is utterly simple and abstract that doesn't have any borders. That's why we say that Bina cannot relate to the Or Ein Sof. The Or Ein Sof, as God is, before he manifests himself into creation, into expressing himself as a power that creates this or creates that, or could do this or could do that, and so on and so on, until Hashem enters into some kind of framework, Bina has no approach to God at all. The whole davar shehu pashut, everything that is utterly simple. For example, another thing, Bina has nothing to say about the soul itself, because the soul is simple with utter simplicity. Bina can talk a lot about the soul's features, which means I can look into a person and I can describe his or her personality traits or definitions. But I have to grasp on to describe the person by their features. But to be able to appreciate just the pure soul, I can't do that. But I can close my eyes and meditate and just silence myself and try to sense your soul, who you are and what you are. Oh, that's already the power of Chachma. That's not Bina. I'm just opening the windows of my being and allowing your soul to enter into my consciousness. And then I can sense your soul. And then I can sense God also. It's about silencing the mind and leaving an openness and allowing the light to shine in, where I don't have to grasp it. I can just relax and allow it to be as it is. And so that's why Chachma is associated with looking at something. In looking at something, I'm not forcing my definitions onto it. In seeing something, I allow it to show itself to me. However, hearing about something, hearing is already hearing the details. And I'm piecing it together based on hearing the details and its definitions. So hearing is associated with Bina, and seeing is associated with Chachma. He says, everything that's simple. That doesn't have any corners, which means anything that, the only thing that doesn't really have corners and definitions is something that's not in existence. Ultimately, the only things we can really talk about is God, and anything that's associated with God, like a soul that's a piece of God from above. It's undefined with any definition because it's not something. And Bina can only operate with the thinginess of things, with the somethingness, because it needs to grasp onto the definitions of it. So anything that is not a thing, is not grasped in the hasaga, in the graspable side of the mind, which is the Bina. Because grasping grasps only by the ends of the thing that is apprehended, which is the image of it. The image of something is only the existence of it, not its soul, not its essence. Not the essence of who it is and what it is. That's one of the most refreshing things of being able to go to having a Rebbe, because everybody else, when they look at you and when we look at people, we look at them and how do we interpret them in our own mind? How do we evaluate? So, depending on who is looking, some people look very external, very superficial. People will look at the person, how their physical status is. Are you tall, you're short, heavy, light, red, black, old or young? These are physical features. And then if I'm a little bit of a deeper person, then I dismiss the body. Doesn't make a difference, the body. I'm looking at who you are as a human being. So I look at your accomplishments. What did you do in this world? How intelligent are you? How fine are your character? But these are all definitions of a person. These are all the ksavais. These are all the defining factors of a human. But then there is the pricelessness and the non-definition element of the person, and that is there is the soul itself. So usually, us as people, we operate our analysis of other human is with our bina, and since we're looking at people with our bina, we summarize them based on their features and we lock them into those features and that itself can be a limiting projection on the other individual. A tzaddik, and especially a rebbe, is able to look deeply into the soul of the other individual, which means see their substance as a piece of God from above. Now, it doesn't mean they ignore the external accomplishments, doings, and developed power of the person. No. They appreciate that as well. They have the bina as well, but they also have the ability to gaze at the essence. And from the essence, they can, if needed, they can tweak and help the person undo certain limiting factors and definitions that either they have rightful and true definitions, but not essential definitions. And a person doesn't have to be stuck in these defining parameters, especially if it was something that was impressed upon a person by their peers and by other people telling them that that's who they are, and that's why they began to believe these definitions and these limitations. So it's always good to have that view of someone who can unstuck you by delving deeper into the substance of who you are versus the existence of who you are. The existence is already a defined entity, how you exist, how you're manifesting. But then there is the substance of the soul, which is an undefinable piece of God that has the ability to do miracles. But that's a quality of Chachma. a quality of Chachma. But the Chachma, Teifes, is able to grasp be'etzem mahus hadavar, in the essence and in the substance of the matter. And this is the idea, Mashad Moichen the Abba. And for this reason, we say that the Mochen, the level of intelligence associated with Abba, father, which father is Chachma. Chachma in Kabbalistic terms is referred to father, and Bina is called mother. So in mother, in the Bina dimension of the mind, just like a mother develops the shape and the form of the child, the father gives the substance of the child. The father gives the soul. The father gives a seminal drop that is uncolored, undefined, unspecified, it's got the entire DNA of the child, but in a very, very abstract, undeveloped state. Mom is the one who begins to differentiate all the organs and all the limbs and beginning to create the structure, the ktsavos, the definitions that happens in the mother, but not in the father. So the father is the chachma. So what do we say? It's considered above the entire evolving order. Because even though chachma is, as you mentioned in the end of the last chapter, already part of the or pnimi, part of the internal light, the light that goes into vessels, yet it's an or pnimi, but it's not part of the hishtalshalus of or pnimi. Hishtalshalus of or pnimi means the evolution of that or pnimi, how the or pnimi evolves from level to level. That evolution, where one level evolves into the next level, that begins with Bina and onward. From Chachma to Bina, even though Bina comes after Chachma, and even though Bina is derived from Chachma, but not through a process of Hishtalshalus, not through a chain-like connection between the Chachma and the Bina. In a sense, we're going to see, for Chachma to influence Bina and to produce Bina, there's a certain Yesh Me'ayin, there's a certain something from nothing. And that's the reason why it's not called Hishtalshalus, because Chachma still stands above this entire evolution process, which, as we're going to see soon, the evolution process that has to do with the existence of something and not the substance of it. To understand this better, we're going to explore Be'ezras Hashem in the classes that we're going to give Be'ezras Hashem next week. Just wanted to finish up at least one more class in this week. Stay tuned for next week for an amazing explanation into the worlds of Chachma and Bina, which is going to carry us through probably for the next, I would imagine, about 15 to 20 classes. Okay.